On today's show, the Hawks have now won 3 straight games, and this time it was an early afternoon, unexpected matinee that became a big-time comeback for Atlanta to erase a deficit on the way to the victory. We'll get into how it unfolded and more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2151 of Locked On Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Monday afternoon, actually here at the end of January. And today's podcast is sponsored by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. It's the last call for football over at FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Check it out now at FanDuel and FanDuel.com. And today, we'll be diving into what became a 132-116 win for the Hawks at home against the Pacers. A strange game in that it was supposed to start at 7:30, the normal time on Monday, and because of all the weather-related, ice-related activities around Atlanta, they tipped off just after 1:30 this afternoon, so a very sparsely attended game, a strange middle-of-the-day afternoon contest, and a Hawks slow start to be sure, but it was a third straight win. It was not easy at all. The Hawks were favored to win this game by 5.5 points, according to our friends at FanDuel, so a game that the Hawks were in a good spot in. Indiana is a pretty bad team overall this year, but I said this before the game started, so it's not revisionist. The Pacers were kind of back to their not full strength, but much more reasonable strength in this game. I checked in with my friend Tony East of Locked On Pacers to confirm this, but Indiana was basically healthier than they've been all year long. They had Siakam, they had Aaron Nesmith, they had Nembhard available, Ben Mathurin came back, so they're not nearly as bad as the record indicates with the team that was available today. And fortunately for the Hawks, they were not quite their still finals strength selves from last year. But Atlanta came back, erased the deficit, and they'll see the Pacers again, by the way, on Saturday in Indiana. But really, this is kind of a 2 different games in one situation. The first 30 minutes of the game were not very good for the Hawks. We can be honest about that. They were down by 15 points with 6 minutes to go in the third quarter. And in more detail, I'll talk about that later on. But from that point forward, the Hawks won this game by 16. Which means they were pretty much dominant for the last quarter and a half, 18-ish minutes of this game. And on the way, hey, 48 minutes, all that matters is the overall result. I like to give you the whole picture about these games on this podcast, but the big picture is a comfortable win by the end in a game that the Hawks really needed to win because, as I will talk about later on in the podcast, they have a very, very difficult back-to-back on Wednesday and Thursday, both in Boston and then home for Houston. So winning a game like this that you are supposed to win is important, and the Hawks went ahead and did that, even if it was not very pretty the entire way. So I would say the offense was better for the Hawks the entire game as far as the big picture is concerned, even if the defense finally getting things going in the second half was a huge part of what changed the game late. But the Hawks had a 119 offensive rating in this game, which is very good, like top of the league, kind of good. They shot it well really the entire way. For the first 2.5 quarters, their shooting was the only reason the Hawks were actually able to stay afloat on offense. They weren't doing much elsewhere. But they shot 42% from 3 in this game, 18 of 43 from deep. That's usually a very nice elixir to other problems. They were pretty good inside the arc as well. They got to the line more as the game went along and shot it well when they got there, but they also got into the paint more and more, which definitely was a huge factor in changing the game after halftime. But what really changed the game, in my opinion, on offense is that the Hawks stopped turning the ball over. And that might seem simple, but I promise it's not. They had 14 giveaways in the game. That's a totally fine, like league average number for a full game. But they had 12 turnovers in the first 2.5 quarters, which is not good enough ball security. And then only 2 in the last 18 minutes. And that's not a coincidence. The Hawks went on a big run where they stopped giving the Pacers free runs and actually got shots up and, generally speaking, won the possession battle the rest of the game. That was a huge factor in helping the game flip in Atlanta's favor because, again, as a reminder, when they had those 12 giveaways, they were down by 15 points in the third quarter, and then they stopped turning the ball over. Big run from there. And they got downhill a lot more. Their rim frequency went way up late in the game, which is usually good process for your offense to actually break the paint, get downhill. All of the guys post-game said that. McCollum said that. I believe Dyson. I know Quinn talks about that later in the game. They just started to get to the rim more often, and that was a better sign. But individually, Luke Kennard was awesome. McCollum gave them a lot of offense in this game. They were able to win this game, honestly, with a pretty middling performance from both Alexander Walker and Okongwu, and a pretty bad performance from Jalen Johnson. So if you just told me, hey, there's going to be a game where Nikhil and Okongwu are just okay and Jalen is pretty bad, the Hawks are probably in trouble a lot of the time. But they got a lot from everybody else for the most part in this game. In particular, Kennard, McCollum, Dyson, and then Christian Koloko had a career high effort offensively in this game, making all 6 of his shots. So a nice balanced performance from the Hawks to overcome some of that the shortcomings, I would say, from the big guys. But overall, the offense was pretty good in this game, even if it was better late, as most things were for the Hawks. Interestingly enough, on defense, the Hawks were really bad, I thought, for about 2.5 quarters in this game. But then they were actually quite strong at the end. So they ended up with a 106 defensive rating. If you were at work on a Monday afternoon and couldn't watch this game, that's a very good number. And if you just told me, hey, 106 defensive rating, would you say yes or no? You have to say yes to that. That's like an elite figure on defense. It's also kind of crazy that was the number by the end because of how poorly they played on defense for, again, 2.5 full quarters of this game. But in the last 18 minutes, the Hawks allowed 31 points, which is excellent. They had like a defensive rating of around 70 in the last quarter and a half. They finally decided to kind of wall off the paint more often and stop giving up those straight line drives. Also, stop getting beat backdoor all the time late in the game. And look, admittedly, it's never just one thing. I always say that. There's nuance involved, context involved, and all of this stuff. The Hawks were definitely better defensively in the last quarter and a half. But also, they got a little bit of help from Indiana. Indiana shot 1 of 14 from 3 in the last 18 minutes. So the Hawks were better, but they also got a little bit of good fortune from beyond three-point arc to level to, I would say, to kind of maximize things. The Hawks probably still would have won this game if with some normal shooting from the Pacers late, but because they couldn't make a shot, things spiraled in the Hawks' favor, and that allowed it to kind of get the comfortable win down the stretch. But overall, they were good on the glass, which is a rarity for this Hawks team defensively. Even when they were struggling on defense, though, they actually forced turnovers along the way. They had 17 takeaways on defense. That was kind of their only saving grace in the first half of this one. And they also blocked 7 shots. They generally were pretty good. Once they stopped letting Siakam do whatever he wanted to, I know my guy John Hollinger asked about that post-game to Quinn Snyder. Like, Siakam just got a lot of easy stuff in that third quarter in particular. With the Hawks walled that off, it was much, much better. And other than McConnell and a little bit of Mathurin in the first half, the Hawks did a pretty good job taking away the easy stuff once the game progressed. So, look, big picture, a win over Indiana in an afternoon time slot on a Monday is not going to draw national headlines, nor should it. But this is a third straight win for the Hawks to erase some of the downturn that happened earlier this month. And it was a resilient game. At no point did I think the Hawks were like in dire trouble in this one, but you got to be honest, down 15 mid-third quarter, it's like, hey, the Hawks are now underdogs in this game. And I checked the market, FanDuel markets. They were underdogs at that point in time. But from that point forward, it was 62-31 in favor of the Hawks over an 18-minute sample, doubling up the Pacers over a quarter and a half. And yeah, that's really nice to do. And one more time is an even bigger win because, A, the Hawks have been pretty bad at home this year. Everyone knows that. B, you got to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat in the NBA. And then C, there are no guarantees with this back-to-back on Wednesday and Thursday. So a little bit extra emphasis. I had someone call it a must-win to me pregame. I never used that phrasing, but it was a important win. I would frame that for the Hawks, and they got a good performance along the way, even if it took a little while for that to actually manifest on this Monday afternoon. All right, in a second, I'll dive into how this game unfolded, plus updates on Ricochet and Porzingis and Asa Newell, everything in between, and it's coming up in just one moment. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff. The final chance to get on the action before NFL season actually comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel's making sure that you're right in the middle of the action with just a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year in football. Whether you're backing the favorites, running with the underdog, or just building one last inning parlay, this is the game that everyone has been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every single snap feels bigger than the previous one. Plus, FanDuel sells everything we're looking for across the sports betting space, from pregame lines and live lines and all kinds of sports across the board. That includes basketball, which we discuss on this podcast all the time, plus baseball and hockey and golf, tennis, soccer, MMA, boxing, and so many more sports in between. And FanDuel is the perfect way to cap up the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting to kick off to the final whistle. If you are a new customer at FanDuel, you can bet just $5, and get $200 in bonus bets if you win that first bet at FanDuel. That's $5 and $200 in bonus bets if you win at FanDuel, if you are a new customer with FanDuel. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season, and the football season anyway, is over. It's the last call for football on FanDuel, an official sports partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, thank you as always. Make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. If you ever want to go ad-free, you can do so now by joining the Everydayer Club. And if you sign up by the trade deadline on February 5th, you can use the code DEADLINE to get your first month free. Tap the link in the show notes to learn more. And before we dive into how this game unfolded, I have some personnel updates to give you that were dropped on Monday morning about the Hawks. The first one was a very positive one. Zachary Richeche is getting closer. He's now listed as day-to-day moving forward. That's a clear step forward for the Hawks and for Richeche. He was assigned to College Park over the weekend to get in a practice on Sunday. The Hawks Big League Club were off on Sunday, but Zach got in a practice with College Park, and he could be back as soon as Wednesday. Now, I would not just assume he's going to play on Wednesday. It is a back-to-back, so perhaps they hold him out until Thursday or even Saturday, but he's definitely getting closer, which is certainly a positive statement for all parties involved. Porzingis, on the same update, is now, quote, participating in basketball activities and will be reevaluated in approximately 1 week, end quote. I've made this joke already on social media, but maybe Monday morning, every morning, we'll get in an update that has the same exact wording on Porzingis. He's been out for a while now, 3 weeks or so. I know there are always theories about Porzingis, but yes, I'll just say this. This is actually an injury. He is really battling Achilles illness and stuff. It's not trade related that I'm aware of. People keep asking that question. Yes, they could trade Kristaps. That's definitely possible. That's not why he's sitting out. Both can be true at the same time. Anyway, he's still out, and certainly the Hawks could use him, but they've gotten Koloko to help things out in the meantime. And then I also force reported this earlier today. Asa Newell traveled with College Park, the G League team, to the West Coast today for a 3-game trip. He could return if they needed him, for example, but College Park plays on Tuesday in California, and he is with them on that trip. So at least for right now, they've chosen to have Asa play a little bit more in College Park. Quib was asked pregame by Caleb Johnson at 92.9 about this. He gave a pretty diplomatic answer, but it's just not what you would think it would be. Once they got Koloko, and I think that Koloko is not as talented as Asa, but positionally, Koloko's the center, Asa's not. And once that happened, it was like, hey, why don't we get Asa some actual like long playing time, like 30 minutes a game kind of playing time in College Park. That's very, very normal for a late first round pick. I know he's played a lot this year for the Hawks. He's actually done really well this year for the Hawks, in my opinion, but it's nothing out of the ordinary at all for a player like that to play in College Park midseason. So that's what's going to be happening, at least for now. And that's all I got on that. All right, back to the game itself. The Hawks were trailing for a lion's share of the first 2.5 quarters of this one, down 7 right away in this game. The Pacers were really hot shooting-wise early on. The Hawks also had 2 very bad, like pick-6 turnovers into dunks. Atlanta missed some open threes early on, and there was kind of a sluggish start to an afternoon game. Rotationally, no surprises at all. It was McCollum and Kennard as the first perimeter subs, Koloko as backup center, and then Moge as the 9th man. Vit Krejci played 1 stint of competitive basketball. I played like 4.5 minutes in the first half, but that was basically it. So it was like a 9.5 minute rotation for the Hawks in this game, which is kind of similar to what it was on Friday in the win there. Dyson had a monster dunk over Michael Potter in the middle of the first quarter. Also had a nice blow by Ben Mathurin. I thought Dyson was very, very good in this game, like best player on the floor, kind of good in my opinion. But the Hawks struggled to get stops for a very long time. They allowed 30 points in the first 8.5 minutes. That was like a 140 defensive rating, pretty rough. Ben Mathurin has been a Hawks killer for a while. He ended up this game with 16 points in the whole game, but they all came in the first like 11 minutes of the game. He also for his career has his best shooting numbers against the Hawks, and that was definitely the case early on in this one. He did cool off, which was a blessing for the Hawks. They got a little bit better late in the first quarter. I will say Quinn Snyder gets a lot of grief, including on this podcast sometimes. It was a good sub late in the first quarter to go to Dyson on defense, and he got a steal to reward that decision. That was a good move from the coaching staff there. Atlanta was down 4 at the end of the first quarter. I thought Mo Gay had some nice moments defensively in the first half, but the team did not score on the first 5 trips of the second quarter until Kennard got to the line and put together a 12-2 run to tie the game. So from that point forward, it's like, hey, all right, the Hawks had a kind of a slow start, tie the game, reset, they're in good shape. And then, unfortunately, it was the opposite of that. Basically, nothing went right for about 5 minutes. The Pacers scored 10 points in about 90 seconds right after that. The Hawks had a bunch of like pretty glaring breakdowns on defense, even on offense too. They scored 3 points in like 5 minutes. They missed 6 straight threes, and they're done by 11 all of a sudden. It's like, whoa, what's going on here? Then McCollum dragged them out of the muck a little bit with 3 straight threes. That was his biggest run of the game for sure. And the Hawks got back within 4 at halftime, despite a very, very poor defensive performance in the first half. And then on offense, They shot it well, but did basically nothing else. They had 0 second chance points, 8 turnovers, and 4 free throw attempts in the first half. So all the underlying stuff was rough. They made some shots, but they're done by forwards. Like, all right, they're in decent shape here. But immediately in the third quarter, the beginning of the quarter was not very good. Now, Dyson made a 3, which was noteworthy. He's only been taking like 1 per game for the last 6 weeks or so. He had not made a 3 since December 14th. So that was nice, but nothing else went well early in the third quarter. Quinn was mad about some officiating stuff. I agree with this. There was a really bad loose ball foul call against Okongwu, followed by a shaky call on the other end of the floor on Siakam. There was like a 5-point swing towards Indiana. And then the Hawks were down by 15 points mid-third. So before the run came, they allowed 21 points in 5.5 minutes. And defensively, it was just like not going well at all. But simply put, they dominated the rest of the game. And it started with the third quarter. So they had a 25-7 overall run, including a 15-2 run in the last 3 minutes of the third quarter. For me, it began with Dyson turning it up on offense and defense, attacking the rim, cutting off drivers, like just playing fantastic basketball. And then Luke Kennard had a big stretch where he actually hit 3 straight shots, had a cutting layup as well. And then the Hawks allowed 7 points in like 6+ minutes defensively. So that was a impressive and important stretch to go from down 15 to up by 3 by the end of the third quarter. Then they scored the first 7 points of the fourth quarter to go up by 10. Luke hit another 3. It was overall a 32-7 run from the Hawks. And there was one more hiccup in the middle of the fourth quarter. Okongwu had a terrible miss at the rim that was like uncharacteristically bad from him. And then Kispert just drove to absolutely nowhere and turned it over, and that led to a fast break dunk. I would say that was appropriately the last time Kispert played in the competitive portion of the game. He was the one guy who had some pretty rough numbers in this one. But from that point forward, they get a timeout. They score on the next 4 trips in a row. They get 2 stops. They're back up by 11 again, and it was never once close again at the end. In fact, they were up by at least 8 points the last like 7 minutes and up by at least 10 points in the last 5 minutes of the game. And one more time, the overall run was 62-31 over the last 18 minutes of the game. And basically, in the second half, as long as they were playing their like lineups that made sense, they did a really good job. And the bench was absolutely fantastic. One more note that actually came from Hawks PR that I want to make sure I get right on the pod. But it was like basically like a historic production from the bench. The unit was 55 points off the bench for the Hawks. The first time since 1970-71 that the Hawks bench had 50-plus points on at least 70% shooting and 6% from 3. So basically some nitpicking there as far as like where the barriers are. But the bench as a whole shot it great and played great, and that definitely was a huge factor, along with, I would say, Dyson and pushing this game above where it needed to be for the Hawks. All right, in a second, I'll dive into the individual player stuff, and there's a lot of positives to get into from this, even amidst some shaking stuff from the top guys in this game. Plus, I look ahead at what's to come the rest of the week, and it's coming up in just one moment. There's nothing like being actually in the NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment, it's really all there for you. It's a fantastic place to be anytime there's an NBA game happening. But the ticket buying process has not always been so simple. That's why Gametime actually has the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without any of the hassle that you do not want to go through. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, and that is with the fans. You can pull up the Gametime app, pick up an upcoming NBA game, and have tickets locked in within minutes. At Gametime, they have prices that are all in up front, which I personally love to see. No surprise fees at the end of the checkout process. Also, being able to see the views from your seats before you actually buy them makes the decision really easy for you. And at Gametime, they have last-minute great deals as well. Tickets for the NBA games showing up at solid prices just before the tip-off actually happens. Everything feels quick, intuitive, and stress-free from start to finish. You take the guesswork out of buying tickets for the NBA and everything else with the folks at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That code is LOCKEDON. That code is LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Gametime app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not gametime.com. One more time, the code is LOCKEDON at Gametime. Download the Gametime app today. All right, and to the individual breakdowns and player evaluations in this spot for the Hawks. Only 11 players active, with Asa going on the trip with College Park, and Keaton Wallace was the one that did not play in the competitive portion. Keaton played in the final minute when the game was out of control. Other than that, Vit Krejci played one stint, did not score, 6 minutes. Vit is definitely seemingly falling behind both Kennard and Kispert. That's not out of the ordinary. I think that Veet's been struggling for a while now, and I think Kispert's a little bit more physical than Veet is. When Ricochet comes back, there will be a decision to be made about who does not play, because I think that's just too many wings as it is. But right now, it seems like Kennard and Kispert are ahead of Veet in the pecking order. Mo Gay was really good, I thought, in this game. 7 points on 4 shots in 13 minutes, 6 rebounds, had a steal, was great defensively, was plus 16. I love that Mo's back in his like natural habitat as a power forward, like help side, havoc creating defender. He's so good in that role, and that's where he should be. That's a sneaky part of the Koloko addition, is that Mo can just wreak havoc now. They actually played Koloko and Mo together for like a minute in this game, which is a little bit aggressive, but I think that Mo with a Kongwu makes a ton of sense, and that happened quite a bit in this game to very strong success. Luke Kennard was awesome in this one. 13 points on 4-4 from the floor, 3-3 from 3. 3 assists for Luke, had a block shot in this game, was plus 26. Ever since, like, it's been like 6 weeks now, he's been playing really, really well. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. This version of Kennard, the last like month and a half, 2 months, has been what the Hawks were looking for the entire way. Better on defense than he's been previously. The shooting is very valuable. The playmaking as well. Good passer, rock solid, and has been playing very good basketball. Christian Koloko was really good here. At career high, 12 points on 6 shots, was 6 for 6 from the floor, had 4 rebounds, did have 4 fouls, but blocked 3 shots, was plus 9 in the game, like just totally rock solid. Like I think people have been going a little bit crazy about Koloko. Like I saw the word dominant being used. I wouldn't use that word about Koloko, but he's playing really well. And look, Quinn kind of acknowledged this tacitly after the game when he was asked about Koloko. It's like, it's not so much about fit. It's like, it's a need thing. That's kind of the way he put it. That's not exactly an exact quote, but like they just needed someone who could play a more natural center role. And I think that Okongwu was a center, no matter what people say about him, but having Asa and Mo as your only backup center options just was not tenable. Everyone knew it, and they addressed that. And Koloko might cool off, but he's been playing really well defensively. He sets really good screens, finishing around the rim. Like he's a good player and a real prospect. Like he was a top 35 pick a few years ago. He's had some injury issues, but he was on different teams this year. He was in Memphis. He was in LA. Like he's been an NBA player for a while. Is he some awesome guy? No, but he's been playing well and fitting that need very, very well. And the Hawks were good in his minutes tonight. And I think he's given them a nice little spark since he actually joined the team a few days ago. CJ McCollum, also good in this game. 23 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists for CJ, 2 steals, was plus 27 in the game. That's actually a crazy high number. I thought McCollum had a kind of a rough stint in the first half where he was doing a little bit too much over dribbling and kind of just over cooking things on offense. But he settled in really nicely, I thought, on second watch. In the second half of this game, he was much more in the flow of the offense. A couple of big shots. That spree at the end of the first half was a huge one, shooting-wise, but some good passes in the second half. The Hawks did a good job, and my friend Kevin Sharp pointed this out in real time, of kind of flattening out a little bit on offense to allow McCollum to get to his mid-range stuff a little bit more effectively. TJ talked pretty openly post-game about like getting comfortable with the offense and kind of what they want to do. He's still, and it's something that fans always kind of forget with new players, like they're just kind of learning what's going on still. McCollum's been in the league for 15 years. He's still figuring out what the Hawks want to do. That's very natural. There's not like a ton of practice time, and I think he's figuring it out on the fly and getting better and better. I thought he was just much more in the flow of things in the second half in particular. So, and even defensively, he was better. I think that he's still being attacked quite a bit, but I think he was able to kind of withstand that after halftime, which was certainly good. He was a big plus in this one overall. That was the bench. And again, everyone on the bench since maybe Vit Krejci played very well in this game. And that was a huge factor between McCollum, Koloko, Kennard, and Gay. Maybe a collective game ball to those 4 guys in this spot. To the starters, the one, tough one to talk about, Kispert had a weirdly bad stat line. So 7 points in 17 minutes. He missed all 4 of his threes, 3 assists, 1 turnover. Kispert was minus 25. It is hard to be minus 25 and it gave you 1 by 16 points. That's crazy. That means the Hawks were plus 41 when he was not on the court. Now, that's not all on Kispert. Both can be true at the same time. He didn't play very well. That was evident on film to me, even in real time. But also, it takes a special constellation of events to have this kind of disparity between plus minuses. Corey had a rough one, for sure. He also just wasn't on the court for the huge run in the second half, which is basically what that accounts for. I think Ricochet being in that spot will be helpful for everybody involved. He's just a much better player than Kispert is. I think Kispert's better than this, for sure. And I look forward, not like anticipation-wise, but just like trying to figure out what the Hawks are going to do when Zach comes back. I hope they stay big generally and give Zach minutes at the 3 and kind of maybe fill in around that. Less of, if it was me, I would just not play V personally when Zach comes back. But we'll see. And less of Kispert. But for now, he'll catch heat, and I think that's fair to say. He was not very good in this game. He also wasn't quite as bad as the minus 25 might indicate. Elsewhere, Nikhil had kind of a quiet game. He made some threes in the second half that were big shots, but 21 points for Nikhil. It's funny that that's a quiet game for him, but I thought the first half he was pretty shaky for him, like a below average game for sure from him. But 21 points, 3 assists, 3 steals, was plus 10 in the game. He was a big part of that late run, so he kind of made up for it late. He was fine. I thought he played fine, not great, but fine. Okongwu, same thing. Like, I don't think he was great by any means. 12 points, 10 rebounds. Did have a block shot, was plus 7. A couple of weirdly bad misses around the rim for him. He's usually so good with his touch around the rim. He was 3 of 7 on twos. Not so good in this game. But I thought he played good defensively in the second half. Also, a weird matchup for him in that the Pacers were playing basically without a center, like the vast majority of the game. It was Micah Potter a little bit, who's like kind of a hybrid big, and then Siakam played center. And that was basically it. So it was like a lot of Okongwu playing more of a perimeter role on defense. He was fine. Again, like a fine game for him. Nothing great, nothing terrible. Jalen Johnson had a very bad game, actually. 15 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. Did a 4 steal, turned it over 4 times. He was 4 of 12 on twos, 1 of 7 from 3. Just couldn't make a shot. His defense was waxing and waning. I thought he was better late, like everybody else was, but he had a couple of like pretty glaring mistakes in transition. Just like a weirdly shaky to bad Jalen game. He's still able to make a contribution because he's still that good of a player and he's so well-rounded. So Jalen's bad games are not the same. If you're new to the podcast, I like to grade on a curve of like, what is this guy capable of? So like Jalen's bad games are not bad games for everybody else, if that makes sense. I like to be realistic about this stuff. But for him, not a good game, but that's the credit to the Hawks. Like, again, their 3 highest scorers, maybe you could say McCollum now, but the 3 guys who have been around and been their 3 highest scorers that are available this season, Nikhil, Okongwu, and Jalen, 2 of them were just okay, and one of them is not very good, and the Hawks won by a lot. So that's actually a good sign on the whole. And then finally, Dyson was really good. I thought he was the best player on the court in this game, like better than Jalen, better than Siakam, better than anybody you want to name. I thought he was really, really good. 22 points, 9 assists, 5 rebounds, had a steal and a block, 9 of 12 on twos. Like, he got to the rim. He really defended his butt off for the most part, handling Andrew Nembhard, making him into a passer for the most part in this game, held him at 6 points on 10 shots. Like, I thought Dyson was just absolutely lights out, honestly. Unfortunately, no word on this officially by any means. He stayed in the game, but Dyson was kind of like holding his hand/wrist late in the game. That was kind of evident if you were looking at him closely. I'm not sure what's going to happen there. He did talk after the game, so hopefully he's fine, but just something at least to keep an eye on. The Hawks could not afford that whatsoever for him to be out for any length of time, but I thought he was just masterful in this one. He was the one starter that I thought was like legitimately awesome to go along with the bench, and there you go on this night. So a good win for the Hawks. We'll leave it there on the game. From this point forward, the Hawks have a very tough back-to-back on Wednesday and Thursday. So they go to Boston on Wednesday. Boston, if you remember, beat the tar out of the Hawks about 9 days ago in Atlanta. And then they come back at home to face the Rockets on Thursday. The Rockets are very good as well. They'll be underdogs in both those games, I would guess. I would also note that Houston's in a bad spot on Thursday. Houston is playing a back-to-back with travel as well. So not quite as bad of a spot there for the Hawks. But Boston is playing tonight on Monday night at home, so no travel for them, and they're playing very well, so that's a tough spot. But look, even more so important to get this game today for Atlanta, and objectively, this is not how the Hawks will think, but for me, as an analyst outside, if they could steal one of the two against Boston or Houston, that'd be very nice. So we'll see how this goes in the coming days. Also, as a PSA, I recorded a 2-part NBA draft-focused episode amid the ice and the power outages on Sunday. I was going to post it last night, Sunday night. And then the Hawks announced they moved the game up to 1:30, so I wasn't going to post a podcast before a 1:30 tip-off. So that will be held and that will be posted in 2 parts on Tuesday. So please stay tuned for that. Please subscribe to this podcast, Locked on Hawks, anywhere you get your podcasts. And when you do that, you'll have that podcast, actually 2-part podcast, delivered directly to you in your feeds on Apple, on Spotify, on whatever podcast platform that you prefer. Plus, we are also on YouTube on the video side. So please subscribe there. Ratings, reviews, comments, likes, all that fun stuff. Appreciate it. Please share the podcast with your friends. If you know a Hawks fan friend in your life, or 2 or 3, please link this pod and send it to them and have them check it out. If they don't like it, that's okay, but give them a chance to find it. That'd be very much appreciated by me. Also follow the show on Twitter/X, Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland, or also on Blue Sky at BT Rowland. And then I have my non-podcast work about the Hawks can be found at patreon.com/BT Rowland. Everybody, a nice little Monday afternoon win for the Hawks. Please stay tuned for a two-parter tomorrow on the NBA draft. And we'll see you all next time.